Okay, I'll let these last few trickle in. Oh, yes. They're coming. Okay. We still have people trickling in. Thank you. Thank you very much. Teresa? Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started now. For those of you who came in a little bit later, we do have a packet of information. We're making more copies. We have such a great turnout. Thanks for coming, guys. So, Bernetta will be bringing additional packets down. So, we're going to start with the packet, actually, and you don't need a packet. This is just something that we are going to, I'm just going to summarize it for you. I want you to take it with you and read it on your own. So what we're doing, our discussion is do not resuscitate orders, but in order to understand a DNR, you first have to know the difference between a do not resuscitate order versus a power of attorney, a living will, an advance directive. There are all types of forms out there, and it gets really confusing, right? So we're going to start off by talking about a power of attorney. So the power of attorney form is one where you decide who you want making healthcare decisions for you when you can no longer do it yourself. It needs to be somebody that you trust, and you need to have a conversation to make sure that person is okay following out your wishes, what you want done, and when certain medical crises come up and you can't make those decisions anymore. So you want to make sure they're on board with what you want before you appoint them. But it's really important to go with somebody that you trust. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person that you know. You can do a legal power of attorney, something like that. So the power of attorney is where you appoint someone to make decisions for you when the physician says that you can no longer make them for yourself. So a living will is a document. It's a type of advance directive, but it's for when you are terminally ill. So it's going to talk about what you want, what type of care you want at the end of your life. So that's for terminally ill. And the advanced directive, this form is more general. So this is going to, you're going to be able to appoint someone to speak for you when you can't make those decisions yourself. And it's for events that come up such as stroke, dementia, terminal illness. It kind of combines all of those legal documents into one. And it really just talks about your wishes, how you want to be medically treated in specific situations. So again, if you're going to use the advanced directive to state who your power of attorney is going to be, make sure it's somebody that you trust and is okay following out your wishes. Okay? So that is just a basic overview. The packet that I gave you goes into more detail. So read that on your own time, and then if you have questions, come and see me. So now we're going to talk about do not resuscitate orders. And what we're going to do first is watch a very short video. This is an attorney from Northern Virginia, and he's going to talk about what a do not resuscitate order is, and he'll kind of go into the differences between advanced directives, POAs, living wills as well.
An advance directive is a legal document that gives guidance about the types of health care a patient accepts in the instance that they become unable to make their own decisions. It can also appoint another person known as a proxy to make these decisions on behalf of the patient. In this video, we'll cover when an advance directive applies, who should make an advance directive, and the 4 types of advance directives. First, let's review when an advance directive applies. Advance directives are valid in any medical setting where the healthcare provider has a record of it. A healthcare provider can only go against its orders when the decision goes against the individual.
Teresa, this is not the right video. Is Teresa in here? Where'd she go? She pulled up the video, but it's not the right one, so hold on just a minute. I tried clicking on it, it wouldn't come up right. I gotta love technology. Yes, I can't get it to come up to play though. Let me try one more thing. Copy it.
Minimize it. Did you minimize it, Beth?
Here we go.
Hi, Chris Mays here. I'm a Northern Virginia estate planning and elder law attorney. And in this video,
Teresa's my IT guru. She can do all things IT. There we go.
Here's some, there's more coming off.
video, I wanted to talk a little bit about DNRs. So every once in a while I'll have a client call me and say that they are looking for an attorney, they want an attorney to help them prepare a DNR. So at that point, we usually have to have a little bit of a conversation about what DNRs are, sort of what the process is for putting one in place. So let's kind of talk about that now. Basically, DNR stands for Do Not Resuscitate. It's a form that's set out by the Virginia Department of Health. It looks like this. So these are the instructions. The actual DNR itself is a one-page form that looks like this. And what that DNR says is it's a physician's order, so it's an order from a doctor concerning treatment. Just like a doctor can order antibiotics, order certain kinds of other treatment, This order is a healthcare order prepared by a physician. So that's why an attorney doesn't prepare it, a doctor prepares it. And the basic idea is that if you, the patient, stop breathing or your heart stops beating, then a DNR will instruct your healthcare providers to not provide resuscitation, right? So that means there's no CPR, there's no chest compressions, there's no electric shock paddles, there's no breathing machine or artificial breathing. They're not going to take any action to resuscitate you if your heart stops or if you stop breathing. So ordinarily, if you and your doctor have a discussion and you say to your doctor, yes, I want you to put a DNR in my file, that is basically what happens, right? There's no real need to bring an attorney into the picture or have an attorney involved. So why would an attorney get involved? How do attorneys get involved? The basic idea is this. So ordinarily, you're not going to have a DNR in your file, right? If you're healthy, you're sort of just doing your thing, regular day in the life, you're not going to want to have a DNR in your file, right? You may want to be resuscitated if something happens to you. Typically, we're not going to have a discussion about a DNR unless and until you have a serious illness where you're in the hospital and it may be a terminal illness or it may be an illness where we're looking at the possibility of something like this happening to you. Usually it's going to be a discussion with an older person, and usually it's going to be a discussion when we're thinking about end-of-life type care. A lot of times when patients go into a rehab facility or a skilled nursing facility, the skilled nursing facility is going to want to know what your preference is with regard to a DNR. So there comes a point in the patient's care where the healthcare providers are going to initiate a conversation about whether or not the patient wants a DNR. Now, like I said, if the patient is able to communicate and tell the healthcare providers, yes, I do want one, or no, I don't, then that's sort of how things play out. It can happen, though, that in those circumstances, the patient may not be able to either communicate his or her preference, the patient may not have the capacity to understand what's going on. If that is the case, then we would want to have a third party, a family member or somebody else that we trust, designated with the legal authority to make that decision or authorize that DNR for us, right? Or if we don't want one, to instruct our healthcare providers not to order a DNR. So that's where the attorney comes in, right? The attorney will be helping you make that designation. Usually we're going to make that designation in the form of a healthcare power of attorney or an advance directive. Sometimes you'll hear the term living will. But some sort of legal designation that gives this third party authorization to say yes or no with regard to a DNR. And typically, we also want to include other types of care as well. But that's how attorneys get involved in the DNR process. It's not something we prepare directly, but what we want to do as attorneys is help you ensure that you have somebody authorized to make this decision for you. And then two, that we communicate your preference, right? Part of putting together a healthcare power of attorney or an advance directive is letting everybody know, yes, this is what I want, or this is what I don't want. Because, you don't want to put your family or loved ones in the position of not knowing what your preference is and then not being sure of whether or not they're making the right decision. So making sure that your preference is clearly communicated and that the legal authority is validly transferred or given is very important, right? Especially when we're going to be in the midst of a healthcare crisis. we want to make sure those issues are properly taken care of. So always part of a good estate plan is to make sure that we have advance directive, healthcare power of attorney, those things taken care of, because when the time comes, it's very important to have those things in place and put in place properly.
Okay, so it's really important to know that if you have a do not resuscitate order and something happens to you, let's say we're on the Greenway walking and you trip and you fall and you hit your head and you're bleeding, because you have a do not resuscitate order, it doesn't mean that I'm hands off, I'm not going to help you. It only means I'm not going to give you CPR if you stop breathing. I am going to control the bleeding. I'm going to help in other ways, but if you stop breathing, I will not give you CPR. So how do you revoke a DNR? So a DNR does not expire. In order to revoke, if you've decided, hey, I signed this DNR, I had my doctor sign this DNR, and I no longer want it, I've changed my mind, you need to physically destroy that form, and you need to let your doctor know that you want to cancel it so they can remove it from your chart. You need to let me know so I can pull it from your chart. I'm going to let Janice know. But you need to communicate that. You can't just rip it up and then not tell anybody. Okay? So make sure that whoever you told that you have a DNR, that you go back and you let them know you've changed your mind. So some of you might be thinking, if I stop breathing, of course I want someone to resuscitate me. Why wouldn't you want someone to bring you back to life, right? Well, there are some reasons. CPR is less likely to work on people who are older and suffering from severe illnesses. Some people will experience new medical issues if CPR is successful. Now, there's really no easy way to say this. CPR is violent. If I do CPR on you and I do it correctly, I'm probably going to break some ribs. And then you're not only going to have to recover from whatever it was that took you out in the first place, but you're going to have broken ribs, maybe internal bleeding, things like that. Now, can you recover? Yes, some people can. But that is something that goes into the thought process of, do I want a DNR or not? You can also have brain damage. If your heart stops, after CPR brings you back, you could experience challenges such as speaking, walking, and caring for yourself. So people take that into consideration as well. So let's talk about some frequently asked questions. Can I use a photocopy of my DNR form? Yes. In the state of Virginia, you can make copies of your DNR form to give to different people. So if you want, so I would need a copy in my file. You could give your son or daughter a copy, whoever you want to have a copy. Now, this is going to be important, because in August, our transportation policies are changing. And one of the things that we are changing is that in order to give you not to give you CPR, you have to have your do not resuscitate order on you. So it does not have to be the original, but you do need to carry a copy of it in your wallet, in your pocket, in your purse, ladies, wherever. But in order for the DNR to be honored, it has to be on you. Can my attorney complete the DNR for me? No. It is a physician's order, so the physician has to sign this document, and it has to be someone that you have an established relationship with. You can't just take a DNR form and go down to the urgent care center and say, I need a doctor to sign this. That's not how it works. You have to go to your primary care physician who you've been seeing for a while and who knows you. If I buy a bracelet and I'm out on an overnight out-of-state trip, will my DNR be honored? Now, we're going to come back to bracelets in just a few minutes, but remember, this is a Virginia do not resuscitate order. It will not be honored in other states. When I go out on an activity, do I need to bring my original or copy of my DNR? Again, yes, if you want your DNR to be honored, it needs to be on you. And transportation will not keep a copy of a do not resuscitate order on file for you for HIPAA reasons. So it's really important that you keep it on you. So let's say you just got a DNR. What do you do with it? Where does it go? You need to bring it to me so I can make a copy for your file. Typically, DNRs are placed on the back of your apartment door or in the fridge with your file of life forms. I know that's where Janice likes you to put those, but the back of your door is probably best. How to purchase a DNR bracelet and necklace. So there are 2 companies here in Virginia that are allowed to produce DNR bracelets or necklaces for you. And I have information on those companies and how to reach out to them. But if you wear one of these bracelets or necklaces, it does take place of your DNR form. So if you're on a trip, Teresa's, let's go back to the Greenway. Something happens to you, you stop breathing, and I see that you have your DNR bracelet on you, then I'm not going to resuscitate you. Okay, so let's just review. Let's remember power of attorney is when you choose someone to make your decisions for you when you can no longer make them yourself, okay? Living will is where you talk about what you want, how you want treatment if you are terminally ill. It's end-of-life care. And the advance directive kind of covers it all. And that's where you're going to talk about, health issues other than terminal illness that come up. Now, when you came here, we asked that you provide us with a power of attorney form and an advance directive. So I should have those in my file if you provided those. If you don't know if you have those, come see me and we'll check. If you have updated them, you need to bring the updated copies to me so I can put them in your file. That's really important. What do you have, Charles? Charles came. He is going to assist with any questions, legal questions you might have about a DNR. Okay, any questions? Okay. Yes, Ann?
Let's say I don't, let's say I don't purchase a bracelet. I generally don't do paper. I do everything digitally. Can I just have my advance directive on my phone?
Sure.
Okay. Take it.
Just so, for those that don't know me, I'm Charles Downs. I'm the CEO of Virginia Lutheran Homes, but am also an attorney, so I'm not just making up. I promise. Licensed in the Commonwealth of Virginia, 44006 is my bar number. So yes, just like a photocopy, an image on a phone has the same legal standing, medical standing as a copy. I'm just talking from a legal medical standpoint. Whether or not you have service, you're in Timbuktu, that's a personal decision for you. As a legal or medical direction matter, it's the same. It's the exact same. Buster, oh, I'm sorry.
If I have a DNR on
Buster, wait,
file,
here.
if I have a DNR on file here, does it apply campus-wide or just to my apartment?
No, it's, so again, remember a DNR is a physician's order. So it not only applies in your apartment, it applies as an order in the skilled nursing facility, it applies as an order in assisted living, it applies as an order at Carilion, it applies as an order at Lewis Gale. It's that's the distinction the individual is trying to make. It is from your physician. So a medical provider follows that order as long as they're presented with it. So yes, it applies all across campus.
Who's going to tell the EMS if I fall in the parking lot that's in your file?
Well, that's the challenge, of course. That's you could have your DNR bracelet, you have a DNR necklace, all of those things would notify an EMT that's responding. They look for those things, but practically they're not going to know that unless you take a proactive step to do that.
In other words, you have to have a form of identification.
Absolutely.
In the state of Virginia,
Yep.
the person who handles your estate must be a resident of the state of Virginia. In the state of Virginia, does your POA have to be a resident of the state of Virginia?
No. So again, critically important in that so that we're using terms correctly. So when you talk about a power of attorney, you have a power of attorney that governs things like paying a bill. You are incapacitated and you need to pay your water bill. Your power of attorney allows whoever that is to pay your water bill. They can execute a check in your name when they present that. It's the same principle, though. That's why they call it a medical power of attorney, to allow for medical decisions to be made. And most folks will have two separate documents. One that allows somebody to pay your bills when you're incapacitated, and one somebody to answer medical questions. But generally, they have to be a resident of the Commonwealth of Virginia. However, oftentimes there are exceptions to that. That a medical provider and practically is not going to be very technical in that regard, and they're going to talk those things out with whoever's designated as the power of attorney. Wayne.
What's the default type of treatment if they cannot locate it or if you don't have one?
Well, you're going to get resuscitated efforts. So I'll defer to any physicians, but that is, they will do efforts to begin. Remember, resuscitation is to get your heart beating again. So that could include CPR, chest compressions, that could include paddles, that can include an AED device around. So they're going to implement any medical action that can start your heart beating again. That's all it is, as Beth said, if you fall and sprain your knee, if you say, wait, do not resuscitate, don't touch my knee, that's not how it works. It's all about your heart stopping. But any modality they have available to them to get your heart beating again, it might be chemical, it might be compressions, it might be an electronic, they'll do unless they see an do not resuscitate.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
If I have an advance directive, I'm assuming that the person named in that directive can make a decision. If I have an advance directive, I'm assuming that the person named in that directive can make a decision for me medically if I'm incapacitated. In other words, can say, do not resuscitate. Is that true?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, the complication there is twofold. Sometimes you got to look at how your document's written. A lot of times an advance directive just says, I don't want the following treatments, and it lists them. I don't want to be put on a vent. I don't want chemical something given to me. if there's not specific language in an advance directive that says, I do not want to be resuscitated, then the agent that you've assigned in that advance directive cannot make that order, because an advance directive is very specific. Now, however, if you have a medical power of attorney and you say, I'm going to give all my medical decisions to Beth, and you're incapacitated, and the doctor comes to the family and says, who's going to make a decision? We need to know if we're going to put a do not resuscitate order in the chart, then the medical power of attorney is making that decision in your absence.
That's different than a regular power of attorney?
It is very different than a regular power of attorney. Because most power of attorneys don't say anything about medicine. They don't say anything about healthcare choices. So if Beth shows up at a hospital, and Carillion's done this, because I've been personally involved with them, and a relative comes with a power of attorney, they will say, that says nothing about medical decisions. That says Beth can pay your water bill, she can buy a car in your name, she can sell your house in your name, but it doesn't say anything about making a decision like what medication you should have, whether you're going to be resuscitated, whether you're going to be put on a vent. So you really need to look at your documents to make sure you not only have a power of attorney, but you have a medical power of attorney.
That's separate from a advance directive?
Yes.
So you have to if you look at the advance directive, and if you look at the advance directive and if it doesn't have specific things, then its person's name is covered?
You got to look at the document. This is what I'll say. You know, dough stuffed with something in Poland is a pierogi, but dough stuffed with something in Italy is ravioli. It's kind of the same thing. And what I mean by that is, if your document says it's ravioli, it's ravioli. If your advance directive says, I'm going to have Beth make my decisions for me, it doesn't matter what we call it. We can call it a medical power of attorney, we can call it an advance directive, we can call it a living will. The hospital's still going to follow that language. That's the critical thing, that your document says you're assigning someone to make medical decisions for you. It's got to be that, and it's got to be outside of a power of attorney. Yes, ma'am.
Does a lawyer have to draw up the medical power?
No.
How do you distinguish on the forms for the hospital?
The medical power of attorney has to say medical power of attorney, and it has to have specific language about medical decision-making. Now, I would advise you to go to an attorney, but there are plenty of resources available through the Virginia State Bar for that as well. Yes, sir.
I ordered a bracelet. I ordered a bracelet last week.
Yes, sir.
They required on the form to order it that I put my doctor's name and his telephone number to be printed on the back of the bracelet. If the AMTs see this bracelet, are they required to call the doctor and confirm it?
No, sir.
Why do they ask for that?
Because you can't have a do not resuscitate order without a physician's
Okay.
approval.
Well,
So
obviously I had to send a copy of the DNR with his signature on it to order that bracelet.
Correct. So they want, again, it depends on the bracelet too. If you go to a flea market and have a bracelet, they might not require that, but real reputable companies will require that, because it's then when the EMT comes, they can say, okay, this is a physician's name, a physician's phone number, this is connected to an order. Ms. Lovingood.
Okay, to follow up on Pete's question, let's say on the back of his bracelet, there is a doctor's name. How important is it to keep that name updated? Because doctors change, they leave, they come.
Sure. it's very practical to do that. I will just tell you, in reality, a young Roanoke EMT responding to an event where an older individual has a DNR bracelet, they're gonna follow the DNR bracelet. They're not gonna say they're gonna follow it. But of course, it's very important if you have someone coming and they're asking who is this? Let's contact the physician. I would say yes, definitely do it. In all practical nature, though, I think the more important thing is to have the identification, if that's your wish. Remember, that's the other thing. I don't want a DNR, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for 90% of you in this room to say, I don't want a DNR either. I don't feel like I need a DNR. And I think 90% of you, if you went to your physician and say, I'd like you to sign a DNR, they'd say, why? What's going on? And have a conversation with you. So again, this isn't, I don't want to endorse a notion that we're saying you have to have a DNR. That's a decision between you and your physician, just like, do you want to be on blood pressure medication? Do you want to take hydrochlorothiazide? All of that is conversations with your physician, and that's why the attorney in the video was very important to note. He said this is a physician order, and that's why Virginia and almost every state, I'm sure, requires that's a conversation between you and your physician, because you're making a very serious decision in that regard. Excuse me. Anybody else?
Bill here.
How this works when you're in hospice care across the street.
Sure. Typically in hospice care, when you are engaging the services of hospice, one of the things a hospice provider will look for is that you have a DNR order. If you don't have a DNR order, the hospice provider is going to have a conversation with you about getting a DNR order so that as your care progresses, resuscitation efforts aren't given. And that's a critically important, because if you don't have a DNR order, our staff, just like any staff at any medical facility, will have to provide resuscitation to you to meet the standard of care without that.
But the other side of that is I had pneumonia and went in the hospital and then went into sepsis and was put in CPR or to be done that. My husband and my son both would not go along with resuscitation, knowing how I felt about it.
Mm-hmm.
But and I had a DNR at that point, but since they didn't have it at the hospital, they wouldn't pay any attention to it. And they got me to sign a form. I don't know how they did, but they resuscitated me against really my wishes. But I did, the reverse of that is I'm still living 10 years later. So,
Right,
but
for sure.
I
mean, I guess.
I've been on oxygen ever since then. My kidneys stopped working. I mean, I came out with a lot of, they stopped my heart and restarted it because I went into defib. So I came out with a lot of problems I didn't have going in. So there's two sides to that.
For sure. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Great example of why you need to have papers in order. a confirmation of those documents, have someone that you've had a conversation with about being your medical power of attorney, so they'll follow your wishes. All very important lessons from that story.
And put a copy of it in your pocket.
For sure, for sure. All right, Beth?
Okay. So I want to end with a personal story real quick. Most of you, or some of you know, I was on vacation last week. I wasn't here. I went to the beach with my family, so my mom and dad and my little sister and her kids, and we always get a beach house. We stay together for the week. Now, my dad is sick. My sister and I have known that he's sick. He's got multiple medical issues. But it wasn't until last week, living in the same house with him, that we realized how sick he really is. And so my sister and I were walking on the beach one night, and we were talking about Dad, and I said, you know, I'm giving a presentation at work on do not resuscitate orders. I need to have that conversation with Dad. And she said, Beth, he's already a DNR. And I said, no, he's not. And she said, no, everyone knows that he's a DNR. So I had my cell phone, and I called my older sister, who wasn't able to come on the trip with us, but I called her and I said, Carrie, did you know Dad's a DNR? And she said, yeah, everyone knows Dad's a DNR. So, well, not everybody knew. So when we got back to the beach house, I asked Dad, I said, Dad, are you a DNR? And he said, yes. And I said, well, I didn't know that. You didn't tell me that. He insists that he did, and I forgot, which is possible. But it's also, it might be a conversation you have to have more than once with your loved ones. And also, because if I were at home with my dad and something happened, I would have done CPR on him. And if he would have lived through that, he would have been so mad at me. So, yeah, so just make sure that if you do have a do not resuscitate order, you let your family know.
Did he have the paperwork signed?
He did, yes, he's got the paperwork signed, and we all know now where he keeps it. So, we're all good. Thank you for coming out today. I hope that you all learned a lot from this presentation. I've got the packets. If you did not get a packet when you came in, I've got extras up here. If you want information about the bracelet and necklace, come see me. I've got information for that. And if you want a do not resuscitate order form, I've got those as well. Okay. Thank you.